I'll do that later. Still getting set up. Oh, that's better. I can think now. I had to change the music. So I've come online today just because it's Sunday and I'm enjoying my time in the workshop. I'm preparing something right now to make a prototype today, to cast a prototype, and I'm just really excited about it, which is why I'm working. Happy Easter. And I figured I would just talk to myself like I normally do. Oh, look at that, the light's coming through my lens. Okay, that's better. So I'm just going to carry on talking to myself. Unfortunately, I can't see any comments, I can't see any reactions because this is a syndicated stream, syndicated through Vimeo, which means that I'll come back to any questions and comments in my next stream. I'll do a second stream today and answer any questions there. So I'll probably do another stream after lunchtime and answer any questions or interactions there. But for now, I'm just happy talking to myself because that's what I tend to do a lot. Anyway, I'm going to get started. Is this on? No, it's not. Okay. So right now, oh no, where's the light switch? Excellent. Okay. So I'm just trimming up this part of a mold assembly. It's a mold lining. It's all these raggedy bits. I just got to trim it up. I got to do some detail work on it. Then cover it in release agent and figure out how to assemble it with some other mold components. And then figure out the method of casting, which is actually different for every prototype I make. There are things I learn on the way, and every one of my pieces, even though it's the same mold, comes out different because of the flow pattern, which I try to keep similar for every item, but it's nice to have that creative freedom to get a bit, you know, to just go with the flow. That's what I really love about my work. Everything I produce is unique, but in the same family. So I do concentrate a lot on my work, and sometimes if I'm filming from my shoulder with shoulder cam, it's difficult for me to focus on something and keep you in focus on what I'm doing. But I will switch over the camera sometimes so that you can see what I'm doing. I just demolded this last night and I'm just trimming off some of the flashing so that I can make a tidy prototype and not destroy not destroy the mold lining at the same time. So shortly, when I'm a little bit sick of this, I'll take you for a quick walk around the lab and the office and just show you my lifestyle and how I got into this, because a lot of people are very curious, like how I got into this line of work. Is business doing well? You know, what the pathway was for me becoming a creative entrepreneur. And that's something I find quite fascinating myself, because my background is very atypical. I went into engineering and I got an engineering degree purely because at school I was just good at everything and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my mother and father were, my father was an engineer. He was a fantastic engineer. He created steam engine models, remote controlled airplanes. He was a computer engineer, but he was a computer engineer from the time of like room size computers and mainframes that filled a room. And so he would bring home like all these parts from mainframe computers where he had gone in and repaired the mainframe computer, the tape drives, and like, you know, spools of computer tape or cards with slots in them for the programming. So I was brought up used to all that kind of weird stuff as my toys. Yeah, I like rip apart toys, rip apart computers, old-fashioned computers for my for my toys, and that was cool. I had more fun with a cardboard box than I did with a toy. So, and the best thing I ever did with a cardboard box was to actually build a computer and more than one computer and link them together, and that's how I built my first network. It was a computer that was housed in a cardboard box. So anyway, from the age of 10, I was very familiar with my dad's workshop. I was able to use the lathe and the milling machine. I'd made my first motor. I made the coils out of computer casings, which I cut up and turned into the laminated armature, and wound the coils out of wiring out of computers, which were always fun to me because they all came in these different colors, and you know, I could sell them as bracelets in school, braid them together and sell them as bracelets. So all the scrap from computers was useful in those days. I don't know about now. People are very different now from the kind of childhood I had, and it's kind of sad for me because I feel like I've had an extremely rich life, and there just isn't really the opportunity for it now because technology is almost invisible, and technology is invisible. It's part of our lives and we don't notice it. If it's good technology, that's the aim. They want it to be invisible, you know, like who would have predicted that we would now all be carrying around tablet smartphones, which are as powerful, more powerful than the computers we had back in the 80s. So one thing that did actually leave me with is this great love of doing practical, hand-built, traditional modeling, traditional craftsmanship. And I love the technology to be able to 3D print and sculpt 3D on the computer, but I get a lot of pleasure out of handiwork and to see real models. So anyway, my mother always wanted me to be a doctor. That's the sort of Asian side of study hard. And my father was just like, he dropped out of school at 14 to be able to raise the family. And so he didn't really care much for education. Even though he was really brilliant himself, because he was conscripted into the army or the Air Force, and they made him do some exams to find out where to place him, and he turned out to be quite high scoring, so they made him an officer. But he was in control of all the radar stations and building communication towers and things like that. So when he first joined the RAF, he didn't know anything, and then they taught him maths and everything because he dropped out of school, he didn't know anything, and he was one of those 95th percentile type geniuses at maths. So they put him in charge of the radar towers in Germany where he was stationed. And anyway, there was some crazy stuff that he told me about as a kid, and I always found it inspiring to listen to. So anyway, my science tutor was like, oh, you're really good at science. You should do engineering because it's a sure bet. You'll get a job. People want more women in engineering. There are not enough women in STEM. So I was like, okay, it's a sure bet. I'll get a job. And I don't have to study biology because at that time I was really phobic about biology because I'd been through a lot of unfortunate stuff, which made me a phobia talking about biology. You know, my mum wanted me to be a doctor, but I was very phobic to the anatomy. And if in class we talked about blood circulation, I would just pass out because I'd seen enough blood and I was phobia. So I knew, I was like, oh no, I can't become a doctor, but I loved medicine. I used to study my mum's medical books when I was a kid, just for fun. She was a nurse in her days in communist China. So she trained as a nurse. And she had all these really old-fashioned medical training books, which you don't see now. And they have all these photographs from like really old photographs from like the 40s and 50s, and like when the NHS was established. And because the NHS was established because Britain realized that we had a very weak workforce that needed health, we established the social healthcare system, and suddenly there was like this discovery of new diseases and stuff which were really horrific and never had been photographically documented before in such great detail. So I was able to study from these medical books, which were really horrific, and I just loved it. It was like, ow, man, that hurt. Okay, I'm just gonna keep this down. Ooh. You can see it smacks the bridge of my nose. I wonder if oh look, I just realised I can make it tighter here so it doesn't do that. Duh. Okay, I'll tighten it up. Yeah, I, just for fun, went and studied anatomy, osteology, paleopathology, anthropology, because of my own fascination with disease mechanisms that was born out of studying these old medical books. So I was always fascinated with the start of disease, how that actually transpires in the body, how it builds up. And I don't know, maybe because of the way my study ethic, the way my mum brought me up, I became very astute at seeing disease within people before they could see it. And it was a strange talent of mine that I didn't really understand at the time, but I decided to put in practice one day in my art exam. we had an art exam in school. I went to a Roman Catholic girls' school, all girls. And the theme I was given the day before the exam was Pandora's box. So I had to go into the art exam having prepared one evening what I was going to paint for Pandora's box. And I thought, oh, brilliant, I know. I'm going to paint the disease I see in my father because I don't really know how to articulate it or say it or whatever, but I could see something going on, I could feel it. And I went to the teacher and I'd done my preparation for this painting and nobody knew what I was going to paint. And I brought in this medical encyclopedia with all these diseases in it, old photographs. And then I said to my teacher, I need some wax candles, because my intention was to paint with wax to make a very realistic painting. She was like, okay. So she went running around the school and she found me some tea light candles. And I lit them all because I wanted to melt wax quickly and use it on the painting. I'd never done it before. It was a medium I'd not worked with before, but I knew that it had the effect that I wanted. It had a very visceral effect. I'm in a Catholic girls' school. I've got 5 candles lit in front of me. We're all in silence in this art exam, and girls are looking at me like, she's got pictures of death in front of her in this medical book, and she's got 5 candles. And it looks like she's a Satanist because my art folio, I decorated it myself with beautiful scripture and stuff. And it was a Ouija board, but it wasn't real. I mean, I didn't really believe in that stuff, but it was just beautiful. So I scrolled a Ouija board on my art portfolio, and I'm in the school exam in a girls' school with candles on my desk and a medical book full of death. So naturally, they all thought I was like, I don't know, Satan worshipping or something. So anyway, I did this painting and I put in it my father's bone structure and the heat that I felt in parts of his neck that were growing and his eyes that were bulging and the socket behind his eyes that was somehow congested and pushing his eyes out their sockets. And I painted this huge goiter on his neck. And Pandora's box was like a jewelry box. Once you opened it, you could see all the death inside it. And that's what I could see in people. I looked at them and studied them, and I was aware of their very physical weaknesses without really knowing them, because I would study their ambulation, the way they moved, and you could sort of get a feeling, a sense of where the inflammation was building up in their bodies. And I didn't have words for it at the time. I couldn't articulate myself. I just felt it. So I did this horrific painting that showed my father's death. And the next day, everyone had their paintings laid out and they were all marked with their grades. And there was a note on mine, folded up, placed face down. And I was given an A star. They thought it was an amazing painting because it was completely unnatural. Like, people would study watercraft, watercolor. And there I was painting with wax and watercolor to get that visceral effect. And they just thought it was ingenious and that I portrayed something pretty horrifying really well. But the note on the painting said, please take this home. We can't display this in the school. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, fair enough. Normally they used to display all my work in the school for some strange reason. And that had always been the way since I was like pretty young. I had an unusual ability to see things in 3D from a skyline perspective and map the whole world around me. So from primary school, my maps of the region were placed above the entrance hall, showing the location of the school at the center with this aerial bird's eye view of everything around it. And I was used to my stuff being on display, but anyway, I took this piece of art home, and my parents saw it and they were horrified, and they really confronted me about it because I had portrayed my dad's death, and they were really upset, blah, blah, blah. And they banned me from art. They banned me from painting ever again. And I was really afraid I'd upset them, and I'd brought shame on the family, and I'd brought the devil into the family. You know, it was really quite a tragic time. Things got worse after that. But I did as my parents wanted, and I didn't paint again for 27 years until I picked up the paintbrush again. And then my father fell ill, and he was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And he had it treated with radiation injection, and nothing worked. It grew over a period of 3 years because he didn't want the surgery. It grew to the size of a goiter, just like the painting. Like, I had predicted what was happening to him, and it was getting pretty bad. So 3 years later, he opted for the surgery after having done these treatments, this radiation therapy, where they put you in, they spin you around, and they keep the radiation beam focused on one part of the body. And so they took it out, and it was the size of a grapefruit. And I knew that I had something. I knew that I could feel this stuff. But I still didn't want to be a doctor because I had difficulty communicating with people. No one ever took me seriously. I lost a lot of confidence in myself. I was always very afraid of interaction, and I would block up with speech. People thought I was shy, but normally it wasn't that I was shy. It's just that I physically couldn't speak. If I was put on the spot, I would just go mute. And I thought this was my normal. I didn't realize it was an autism thing. I didn't even know what autism was 3 years ago when I first realized what it was. So anyway, about 27 years later, this is about 7 years ago, I decided, just for fun, because I was in a marketing job, which I really hated, to start studying for medicine. And the best way for me to learn is visually. So I painted what I wanted to learn. I painted all the anatomy, and I realized, oh, I'm actually pretty good at it. So I did my first gallery at a dance school. I did my first gallery presentation. I didn't really sell anything because it was all kind of morbid. That they tend to think of anatomy as being pretty morbid. But I was interested in it purely because I knew that there was something wrong with me, and I wanted to study it and find out if I could fix it, because I knew there was something going wrong inside me. Well, years later, I had multiple hip surgeries, and I had a hip replacement, full hip replacement, which was incidentally the same as my preconceived suggestions and advice on my final year thesis at university in composites engineering, because I decided, instead of a normal thesis where you talk about, I don't know, composites aerospace engineering, I decided to bridge that gap with my fascination of medicine, which is ironic because, you know, I couldn't stand the sight of blood. I could stand gory stuff and surgery stuff, but if it was my own blood, I'd just pass out. But I really wanted to learn, and I didn't want to give in to my phobia this time. So I combined my engineering with a thesis on the stress transfer through a hip prosthesis. And the hip prosthesis I studied was about a 30-year-old Johnson & Johnson hip prosthesis. And it was removed from a dead body. So there were signs on it. And I studied those signs forensically, and I cut it up and I stuck it in forensic metallurgy analysis, you know. And I came to the conclusion at the end of my thesis that they should change the design to different materials because the body is a composite, and the material of the hip prosthesis should better represent the modulus of the strain modulus throughout the body. It should be in proportion to that. And since titanium and actually chromium based steel, like stain, I think this thing was made of steel, I don't know. It was black, it was, you know, it was pretty nasty. Even though it'd been cleaned and everything, there were signs of what it had been through. And I was like, I made a physical model replica of the hip prosthetic according to a design I thought would be better. So I designed it with modulus ratios that were more in line with the body. So it was all composite materials, only I knew that couldn't be done in engineering because you'd never get fiberglass into the body. So my suggestion at the end of the thesis was to make this thing out of a short stem titanium and combine it with ceramics and plastics. And this was a thesis I did maybe 23 years ago. Let me just think. I'm 44 now. So I did this when I was 19. Oh gosh, 25 years ago. Wow. Okay, so this was a thesis I presented 25 years ago on how to upgrade the hip prosthetics. It just happens to be the exact hip prosthetic I'm wearing now in my own body based on those suggestions. So wherever industry has moved, it's not like they took up my advice, it's that they moved in the right direction, which eventually came towards the use of composite materials. Now I'm actually aware of this device, and I still think there's more improvements that can be made. So because I have some discomfort, I am actually looking towards hip revision with new recommendations, and I'll source that stuff myself. So anyway, I got this engineering degree because I thought, oh, well, it's something I can do, I suppose. And I didn't really have a passion for it. I have a passion for learning and for problem solving. But with my difficulty of being taken seriously, whether that's because I'm female, whether that's because I have a eccentric personality that people can't take seriously because I just don't fit in corporate environments very well. I irritate people too much. I definitely can't sit still. And when I'm put on the spot, confrontationally or otherwise, I seize up. I can't communicate. And it's not even if I'm feeling anxious. It's just that I just can't compute what people are saying. So, and I didn't realize this was a disability. I just thought this was a thing, just, normal, because I didn't know any different. I then realized that it's a part of the autism spectrum, in which the doctor suggested to me in Austria about 4 years ago that I was on the spectrum. He called it Asperger's back then, which they still use in Austria, but they don't use over here. So I've since been diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm definitely outside the typical range of neurological behavior, whatever that means. But it's actually given me a lot of comfort, because I now know that my difficulties are not supported in the workplace as a woman or as a neuro-diverse person. So I'm not going to fight it. I'm not even going to try to fit in now, because it's cost me too much of my wasted energy to try and blend in and be like everyone else, only to have it backfire and get bullied. So I'm pretty happy just working on my own now. Although I have worked in film studios, and I absolutely loved it, because no one cares if you're an artist. It's like everyone's an artist, Everyone's working towards the same goal of getting the film done, and no one cares about what you wear, because they're all artists. As long as you get the job done, they don't care if you're doing handstands. So one of my fidgety things is, if I feel like my brain is slowing down or struggling, I'll whip up into a handstand just to get blood flow to my brain and just just have fun. For me, it's a lot of focus. It brings me back, and it's physical, and it does change the blood flow in my brain. So there's that. And then I'm good to go. But it doesn't work very well in an office. There's a girl doing a handstand. She's got her skirts around her ears. I don't care. I'm like, but that it doesn't work in a male-dominated environment where they think you're being employed because you're a skirt, and you're getting places because you're a skirt, and it makes people uncomfortable and not jealous, but they react in ways like, I must be getting special treatment because I'm a skirt. I'm flashing my arse because I keep doing handstands. So it led to a lot of mobbing and bullying. And obviously, some sexual assault in the workplace, and on solo trips where I was traveling. And I was so used to it, I'm just like brushing it off, like it happens. But it was affecting me, burning me, and turning me into a trauma victim. And I didn't know how to deal with that. I wasn't coping very well. And there was no support, no psychological support, no moral support. So I burned out. And about 8 months ago, after having been through this burnout, I was feeling pretty useless. I was feeling like I can't do anything. I can't even get dressed. I can't look after myself very well. Everything's a struggle. I have no energy. What can I do that can just make me happy? So I decided to sculpt on the dinner table. And it was a topic of suggestion that was stimulating a conversation that people were afraid to go towards, taboo. I sculpted a vulva in a very avant-garde, beautifully creative celebration style. And I was nervous about it because I knew that if I told anyone the real reason why I was doing this, I would, it's a very close to my heart thing, and I didn't know what people would react. They would probably think I was weird, so I was like, oh, I'll just put it in the group anyway for laughs, and I don't really care what people think, because I'm doing this now for me, because there's nothing left. There's nothing left to do. I can't do anything else, so I'm just going to make myself happy and try to recover, try to be able to speak again, because I'd lost my speech. I was completely mute a year ago. And now I'm talking to myself all the time. It's really funny. So I posted pictures of my art in this group of chronic crafters. These are, women that just enjoy crafting, and they're probably struggling with some chronic condition, invisible illness, just like I was from home. I posted it in the group, my vaginal sculptures. At the time, they were just vulvas, right? And to my absolute surprise and wonderment, all the women were just raving about it. They were like so enamored. It brought the whole topic of sexuality and women's struggle out into the open, and people started telling their stories in the threads. And I thought, wow, this sculpture is a good thing. I'm going to continue taking it where I want it to go. Because I wanted to heal myself. I wanted to find a way. And this was just the beginning. I wanted to feel beautiful inside. So I started developing the Medusa device itself, which is a surface engineered device, because it has to line the vaginal canal and perform a function, a mechanical function that actually transfers sensation from vaginal pelvic floor muscle strain to the outside. So I need to use like polymorphic techniques that when the canal is deformed and strained and stretched, it will transfer that motion to another part of the device. So in effect, creating a kind of a biofeedback that will enable a woman who has lost touch with her body to regain some control and, biofeedback, to reprogram her muscles, to take the first steps towards letting go of the trauma that they've been through, whether it was childbirth, abuse, or whatever, because the body keeps a score. Whatever trauma you've been through, you can process it, but you can't, your body keeps the score. It's like remembered in that part of the body. So you'll have that same reaction whenever something triggers you in that part of the body, and that sensation reprograms your thinking. It's really hard to overcome, especially when it's in such a plexus like your sexual gravity, It really, because it's combined with your guts, that whole area in the sacral plexus, it's really in the emotional body of yourself, and your emotional body is your subconscious, and it defines your personality. And I wanted a way to heal myself by giving my personality some freedom away from the trauma that it had experienced. So I was taking this device further. And it was all based on these hypotheses that I didn't know if they were going to work or not. But I thought, if I could get pleasure out of this device, then maybe I could become brave enough and overcome the first step to recovering from my psychosomatic pain. Because it would enable a flush of hormones while the muscles are spasming, so that maybe they could reset. And this could happen while I'm cognitively aware that the reaction that I'm getting is normally related to the trigger, the bad thing that brings the bad memory back. But if I can overcome that with enough pleasure, then maybe my muscles will let go and forget. That was the goal. So I developed this device, and it was a lot of experimentation and quite painful. But I was just going to do it anyway, because I have a very strange pain tolerance threshold thing. I don't actually feel a lot of pain, but my body does, and I don't process it very well. So I feel it, but I don't really know what it is. Like other emotions, it's one of my things where I don't really know what I'm feeling, but I have to kind of learn it. Like a constellation map of emotions. Everybody has a rainbow of emotions, and they understand what it is, and I don't feel the rainbow. I don't get it. But what I do feel instead is what's going on with your body. Like, you could be sitting in front of me and I wouldn't give a damn about what you're feeling, but what I can feel instead is the state of your body. Like how much it's struggling, how much I can see that pulse in your throat, how much you're sweating, how much you have small blood capillaries under the eyes, and the edemas that are building up. And I can see all of that. I can feel all of that. I don't have an explanation for it, but that's what I have in place of, I guess, a typical emotional empathy. It's the same as emotion, but I'm getting a rainbow of sensations that are processed differently than giving them an emotional label. So I'm just finishing this bit a minute. There we go. All right, doing a lot of trimming here, but so anyway, how I got into this, trying to stay on track, there wasn't really an answer, but the main answer I can give is that when you go and study for a degree, the first assumption that everyone gives you, including the lecturers, it's the pedagogy of the system, is that you're going to be trained, vocationally trained in this degree, and you will go out and you will get a job. The unfortunate problem for me is that I'm good at what I do. My method of thinking is unusual and therefore an asset, but the workplace is not geared towards supporting a person like me, and I'm going to be forever uncomfortable in this career if I choose to work at the aerospace level, the automotive level, or whatever. And I realized the problem was me, because I was never given the opportunity, never presented with a role model to say, during those years at university, you don't have to get a job. You can do something by yourself. You can start something completely new. You can invent something. You can go your own way. You can change things by yourself. You can, maybe you need to learn some soft skills about how to build a team around you. Maybe that would be better than just telling people you've got an engineering degree and now you're going to get a job. maybe there should be a parallel support system to enable people to go different directions. And I think that would be valuable for everyone, not just women, for everyone, because the economy needs creative entrepreneurs. That's how we create value. That's how we create GDP. That's how we bring new money into the system, by creating a new product, a new service, a new invention that adds value to new ideas, new technology that just came out of nothing. And my idea came out of nothing. It came out of a bucket of silicone and some sculpting clay and lots of trial and error and lots of machinery breakdowns, but I persisted and I tried and tried until I got something that worked. But now I need a team. I need a team to be able to carry on with my development, carry on with my ideas, and start putting my stuff out into the world for me so that I don't have to do it. So I had an amazing interview yesterday with my first potential employee, and I'm so freaking happy. I feel so relieved, so relaxed, because she has a medical degree, she speaks beautifully, and she was giving me advice in the interview. I learned a lot, and I was like, you know what? I need a comrade to take me in different ways of thinking that I can't do by myself. I was never taught those soft skills of physically how to delegate and turn my idea into a scalable production. How useful would that have been if I was taught that at university? Maybe they teach it in management courses. Maybe it's a separate thing, but I think if we go through university, not just teaching it as a special discipline, but seeding the economy with potential new entrepreneurs, new business people, telling them how they can apply for grants, teaching them how to apply for grants, teaching them how to pitch, teaching them how to raise money, find finance, get supporters, investors, sponsors. I really think that needs to be done at the pipeline level of technology to increase the country's brain power and service recognition, contribution to the world economy. Because at the moment, while you're just training workers and you're training people to have a worker's mindset and to be a robotic employee and just fulfill numbers, the big people that are employing people are going abroad, taking the jobs out of the country, and effectively we have a brain drain because people will then come to your country to learn and study and go and do their business elsewhere where it's easier to set up, where they don't have to muck through with the rest of the mucky mucks to try and start their own business. You know, so yeah, I really do need support, but I have so many things to do, I don't even know where to start. So just interviewing someone who could really help me gave me so much last night. I'm just so grateful. And now I'm talking nonstop because I'm that excited. It's like I'm relaxed, I'm happy, and my speech pathways are open, and I can just talk to myself, blah, blah, blah. It's great. So So anyway, this new project I deviated onto and went on a sideline thing. It's always been one of my wants in life, but I never needed it enough to make it myself or to go out and shop for something that I could hack and make my own. And now that I have built a startup, I thought, oh, why not? Why not add it to the product line? Because it could really help some people who I understand are in the same psychological vein as trauma survivors. What people fail to recognize is that physical ailments, things that physically make us ill and diseased, they can all be healed except for physical force trauma and destruction. You know, like a broken, like you've got missing bones because they've all been mashed to pieces. That needs intervention, right? But everything else, the body can heal and use its own amazing system to rebuild itself and replenish every organ in the body every 7 years. So the body has the ability to rebuild. But that trigger actually comes from the mindset, from the mind and body working together. There's no longer just a physical thing that you can put a band-aid on or stick some honey on. Healing has to come from a mindset that sets the chemical balance up with the right triggers so that the body is informed where it needs to go next and fix. So it can put its little soldiers out to fight. It can put its little soldiers out to clean up. It can put its little builders out to rebuild. That sort of thing. But to trigger it requires a certain mindset. And having been through this myself, I know that the easiest mindset to trigger is love and gratitude. Self-loving and gratitude to be able to live. We take living for granted, that we forget how finite life is and what a gift it is. And we waste years toiling, living to work, instead of working to live. And that very mindset takes over our lives and drags us down and prevents the body from healing. So, a quick release for that, without saying that it's, masturbating, is self-loving, is intimacy, is a, ow, damn, I keep doing that. I'll have to stop putting this up, won't I? Because this, wow, man. I just keep it down. I'm doing a lot of trimming on this. I don't know how many holes are in this. I probably punched something in the order of hundreds. Yeah, I would say hundreds, not quite thousands of filigree holes, but I did a lot of engraving on this piece because in my mind, the art of design and engineering is not just functionality, it's about form and beauty to inspire the mind with gratitude, gratefulness, joy. So in my philosophy about design, design engineering should be person-centric, not just sterile of emotion. You need to trigger the rainbow of emotions in people to deliver the stimulation of hormones in the body, the chemical signals that teach the body it needs to heal. In this way, everything I engineer must be an art. It must be an art form. So I am extremely detail oriented. And because I've put so much personal attention into it, it no longer feels like a sterile manufactured piece. It feels like it is a handcrafted piece. Even though I'm using molds, I have to hand pour them. Even though I'm hand pouring, I'm maintaining quality by using certain pouring techniques, measuring techniques, mixing techniques, curing techniques. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. Most silicone items are pretty easy to cast. They take up detail very easily. But when you go into high detail objects, then you have to have quite large injection machines. And that's impractical for a startup, someone like me, although maybe later on I would consider it. But I'm just going to grow at the pace my business grows. And I'm not going to do it too fast because I don't want machines that I can't manage, or, you know. There will always be a custom aspect, even if it's mass produced. And it's going to be a hybrid, the way I see it. For example, the color palettes I develop, those can be charged automatically. I can program a color palette and have something dispense that for me instead of mixing everything myself. So that would save a lot of time. And maybe I could use some really cool fast prototyping techniques for the actual mold making. That might be cool. But I would still need to hand finish everything, yeah. I would mount you on shoulder cam, but this head device gets in the way and clashes, and it's like I got the phone under my left eyeball so that the lens is seeing what I see, but it tends to get in the way while I'm wearing this. So another reason I'm doing all this talking to myself is because I'm practicing my scripts, if you like, for, I don't know, self-confidence, self-validation, because I know what I'm doing. I know that mistakes happen and I will learn from them, but I know what I want to achieve, and I know the steps that I need to overcome, the milestones I need to overcome to get the repeatability and the quality I want to achieve. So I'll get some people say to me, why don't you just do this and then you won't have to do that? And it's like, well, I'm not compromising on the art. There are going to be no compromises to the beauty of what I'm doing. And I'll stick to that. Unfortunately, it does mean at the moment that my prices are not consumer level. They are in the region of art, specialist, one-off, unique pieces. But honestly, if you were to copy this idea or these ideas, I believe it would be inferior in quality to mass produce something that doesn't have all the artistic value. It would just appear clinical, and you know, I've found, like with any other clinical device, it doesn't feel like a part of me that I want to invest in. I need something to feel like a symbiont part of me, so that if I invest in it as my own, then I am rewarded for that by my body. So I'll probably go through this and I'll be looking at the transcription and downloading it, and analysing what I naturally just come out with. Seeing what bits I can steal and reuse. I actually hope that I can be an inspiration to other women who want to get into STEM, not for doing this, but for the mindset behind it, that you can just shift from being an employee to doing something yourself. And doing something yourself doesn't mean you have to go alone. It actually means you have to be smart about the allies you need, the advocates you need to support you, so that you have a clear creative bubble to do what you need to do. Because you can't do anything alone, really. You need a system around you that's going to protect your creative space, your freedom of thinking, and enable you to make decisions because you're not crowded in your head. Geez, I really love what I'm saying. I sound so intelligent. Oh my God. Whew. Ooh, I got new surgical tools arrived yesterday and I haven't pulled them out of the box yet. I'll take you on a little shoulder ride. I've nearly finished, she says. I said this last night when I was like 2 hours into it. Yeah, so I won't show you exactly what this is yet. It is very detailed, but like any piece of art, you're not going to know what it is while I'm making it, and it will just look like a mess anyway. It doesn't look like it makes sense. So I'm going to put it together where you can roughly see what I'm doing as a prototype, and then you'll see the final mold pull, what it comes out like, and hopefully it's a reasonable success, that it actually looks like what I meant it to look like. So I'll do that in the second stream, which will be a couple hours after this one ends. Just when I think I've nearly got to the end, I spot more flashing, which I have to trim off. This is a very high detailed mold, so there was a lot more flashing than I expected because certain layers of the mold hadn't completely sealed off, so there's a lot of flashing, unfortunately. So I don't know how long I'm going to spend on this, on the actual trimming side to get this prototype ready. But I know that the prototype will be done today because I've got all day to play today and build it. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it turns out because I developed the molds for it yesterday and got a sense of how it would look like assembled from the different components. But it's going to be amazing to see the whole thing come together. And as you can see, I'm working with silicone, which it really behaves very unusually. So I have to use surgical tools to make this all work together. It's impossible for me to work with silicone without surgical tools. So I have them everywhere. Silicone behaves like skin, and so therefore you need surgical tools. Whether it's osteotomy tools for, ear tools, or nasal therapy and nasal surgery tools. I've got some nasal speculums here for expanding to look into some tight detailed places for mold releasing. And these tools, they all cost me quite a bit to set up, but they're essential to my work process. I can't do the level of detailed work without the right tools. Otherwise it just looks like a mess. You can't get the right accuracy you need. You don't get the visibility you need. So, you know, I've had to accumulate a lot of equipment over the last few months. But it's kind of a funny fetish of mine, I suppose, to like to come down and have trays of surgical tools that fall in line with my love of anatomy and medicine. So I'm doing what I've dreamt of doing, what I'm talented for, and I freaking love it. And I wonder as well, that because I feel so good about what I've found in my purpose, I feel for those that struggle, who haven't yet found their purpose, who did a degree like I did because they thought it was going to be a sure bet. They had to do it because they didn't know what else to do, blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, our parents are not the best decision makers for us. They don't know necessarily what makes us tick, our passions that were in somewhat initiated by their behavior and bringing us up. I think there really needs to be a different system of support out there. I don't know what that would look like. I know that there are a lot of, I found some women entrepreneur groups that look pretty useful, even as a business person, but to go in at the pipeline level and offer this form of thinking to students who have not yet formed their ideas and constraints, if you like, because you grow up and you close off doorways. I don't like that. I'm not going to do that. If you can start out with a broader perspective of what's open and available to you, you won't close off opportunities that fall in line with your passion. I think that's what needs to happen. Oh my God, I can't wait to cast this. Oh! Now, you know, just as you might be bored watching me, imagine the amount of time and effort I put into everything I do. This doesn't come from being bored at doing one thing. It comes with a passion for the final product, and that type of mindset. Whether you're working for someone else or yourself, it's I think it's very difficult for people to find that for themselves, to find a job they truly love that falls in line with their passion. Or maybe I'm just odd because most people that are happy in their jobs are just happy because they don't have to think, and then they engage their passion outside of work. You know, it could be that. There is that side. But then those people are likely to just be employees, you know, which is it's all good. But not everyone fits that box. And what I'm saying is you need to give people the opportunity to think differently. Because we can only learn, really, by example. It's copying is good. Copying is taking what's been done and making it better, adapting it. When I've gotten this to a certain stage where I feel it's very clean of the flashing, then I'll take you on a quick walkabout because I need to go fetch my new tools from the mailbox outside and then get started on the assembly of the molds as a system. Prepare the mold surfaces, and then I'll take a break, and when I start up the next feed, it will all be about casting the prototype, actually doing the prototype work. Well, I am doing it now, but to actually get a sense of what's gone into it and how I make these ideas come to life. I'm mainly doing this video for me because I will go back and I will look at the transcript, extract that as an essay for me to read through and see what bits I like and I can improve on, and about my self-presentation. I'm assessing myself. Okay, that's pretty interesting. I'm going to see if I can... One thing that I do have a regret with, and I don't really know how to deal with this just yet, is that when I made my parents angry by doing the painting of my father's death, they were angry and they blamed everything and everyone for me doing stuff that was bad for me. And that gave them a reason to say that art was really bad. That I'd somehow become polluted and I wasn't to do art because it would never make money and I would just be a crazy person. And that makes me sad because what I'm doing now is so important to people. I'm helping people and that makes me feel good. That is what I've always wanted to do. You know, I didn't know in those years when I was that young how to articulate to my father that there was something very wrong. And my mum was like, I want you to be a doctor, and they didn't value art. And that's not their fault, that was all they knew. But it affected me in the way that I believed them. And I really wish to this day that I believed in myself. Because if you love something, you're going to be good at it. You will keep on and on trying until you evolve and adapt, and you will become talented at it from practice. Talent isn't innate, I don't think. Talent is something that takes a lot of work and practice and evolution to build on. And I felt cut off at the knees when my parents told me I was not allowed to paint again or invest any of my time in art because they felt that it was worthless. And look what I'm doing now. I'm helping people through art and science and engineering, all combined, which is an art in itself. So maybe if I had believed in myself, it would have affected my life in different ways, I guess. I keep thinking I've nearly finished, and then I find another and another and another. You know, the funny thing is, 6 months ago, if someone had called me an artist, I would have been very uncomfortable to say it because my art was something that nobody liked, nobody understood. My art has always been a lot of self-study of emotions and what I'm feeling because I have difficulty expressing them or feeling anything myself. So my art has always been, for me, a study of disease mechanisms and what gives rise to those sensations in my body that would have been emotions if I had been a different person. But instead they're just strange signals that I don't understand, and I've grown to love it because I used to be uncomfortable with these sensations before, like being permanently shocked or burned or buzzed. It was always uncomfortable and it made me react and avoid sensation because it was often overwhelming and painful in my brain. Actually, in my brain hurts. I know now that I'm not alone in feeling like this, and that gives me great pleasure, great confidence to go out and stand up for people who also feel like I do. Maybe it's the autistic spectrum. I don't think it's the ADHD part of me. But here's what's really cool. I love, for example, interoception, like being able to listen to the signals in your brain and the blood flow in your brain and next to your ear, and when the valves open behind your ear and in your nasal cavities, and details like that I know a lot of people don't notice, and yet I am aware of them all the time. It makes me feel very connected with my body. So even though I'm unaware of what my emotions are, I know when there's something wrong in my body because it's reacting strangely. I mean, when I first started telling people that I could feel my own brain, like no one was going to believe me because there are no vocabulary for these sensations. Emotions have labels. they have a vocabulary, but the sensations I feel do not have a vocabulary. Some people will call them the big feels. Some people will say, oh, it's CPTSD, it's trauma. You've been traumatized and burned, and that's what you're feeling over and over again. Could be, but but I've had this all my life. From the time when I did the paintings of my father until now. And if anything, they are stronger now because I am weaker. I'm weaker in the sense that I'm unable to filter. And that takes a lot of my energy away because I am overwhelmed easily and I suffer as a consequence of the overload. The brain overheats and burns out, makes me tired. And I think, excuse me, I think talking in this way is therapeutic for me because I am able to start to learn how to articulate the way I feel. And maybe, just maybe, there are people out there that go, oh my God, that's it. That's me. I'm not alone. And maybe I can do something special too. Gift after all. Well, I think it is. I mean, I know that I approach learning differently to other people because I'm like a sponge. I learn visually. I learn associatively. My brain is always searching for patterns, and when it spots patterns, it resonates and like echoes in my brain. And it's not that I can't filter it. I can't stop it. It's like echolalia, and you're always popping and saying certain things repetitively. It's like that. I feel things in my brain that give me pause to go inside and examine it. It's like I'm going inside to examine what that sensation is, what that feeling is, and what it means, and where it comes from, and what's triggering it, and how I can tap into it, if it's useful to me, if I can sense anything else with this sensation. Is it an antenna? Am I picking up on something from something in the room, someone in the room, a sound that has turned into a feeling throughout my whole body? Because I feel sound. It's like an aberration. It's a cross-wiring of my senses. I don't hear with my ears. I hear with the pressure sensitivity in my body, and it triangulates as it crawls up my body. And there's like a map in my mind of where the sound comes from, what it feels like, what its density is, its crispness, how reflective it is, how soft it is. And that tells me so much about my environment. It tells me if it's hot outside. It tells me if the pool is swimmable. Like, why is this even useful? Like, why am I built like this? And I started thinking about it and realizing, it's not actually that unusual, because in nature, birds, for example, can sense magnetic fields. So can dogs, actually. And how they do that is because their nerves are actually ensheathed with cells that have a high density of ferrite in them. And the ferrite in such a high density wrapped around the cells in concentric, uniform, unidirectional layers causes a kind of EMF that becomes a signal in that nerve. And I know I'm saying this is like, I don't know if there are any papers written on it. There's probably nothing written about it, and it's just a completely crazy hypothesis of my own. But this is the way I'm framing things, the way I'm interpreting where these sensations come from. So if birds can sense magnetic fields, which that has been proven in science that they can, and it's been proven that they have a certain cell density of certain minerals, how that is acquired or accumulated is supposedly not within our DNA to produce the proteins necessarily to bind and create that ratio of minerals in our own cells. Or maybe it is. Maybe it is a part of our DNA that we share with birds, and it just isn't turned on for all of us epigenetically. Maybe it can be turned on epigenetically. Maybe it's just a missing part of the gene sequence for some people and not others. So I don't think humans share much in common with birds, because our common ancestors would have to go back millions and millions of years. I mean, if you do look at their wings do have the parallel like finger bones in their wings, tarsals, and tarsal bones in their ankles and things. So there are parallel evolutionary things between birds and humans, like crows are so intelligent and they use tools. So there are some genes that we share with birds, and that would be interesting to see what part of the spectrum of genes we share and if those contribute to autistic sensations that hijack other pathways in the brain. Dogs, for example, they can sense magnetic fields, but they sense magnetic fields through their gut, which, if you think about it, is a concentric ring. You've got the cecum, which goes up, and then transverse colon, and the descending colon. And inside that, you've got all the concentric upper intestine. And it is known that dogs, horses, cows will rotate around when they are having a bowel movement, and they will face north. And no one's looked at why that is. But cows like to face the same direction. Usually it's something to do with the magnetic field. And it has been written about in papers. So, my theory about it was, I've obviously had some mental illness issues myself, where I felt things as though I was a creature of the world, of nature, and I was unable to filter as a human being to exist in the real world things that were realistic and useful to communicate about. I was feeling different things, and while I was mute and in this condition, there were sensations that came into my body that encouraged me, for example, to take a bowel movement if I faced a certain direction. Which sounds really weird, but I was like, oh, this must mean the nervous tissue must in some way act like an amplifier for back EMF caused by a magnetic field. Because that would make sense. If you line it up in a certain direction, maybe your guts, which are high fat, insulated, and maybe there are nerve pathways that line up in certain concentric or unidirections that enable any back EMF to feed back and give us a stimulus, a synapse, a result that we can pick up. And because I was mentally ill, I was not in control of being able to filter out the junk that I didn't need. And I was sensing all of this crap. It was very it was unreal, to say the least. It was very unreal. I wasn't scared. I know if people did a brain swap with me and they could feel what I feel, they'd probably want to jump out of my body, to be honest. But I have gotten used to it over the years. I think I'm nearly ready. There's one. I just, when I say I think I'm ready to go, and then, you know. So, yeah. There's another one there, look. Right. I really think this time I have done it. Yeah. So I'm going to end the stream here because I need to take a break. My throat is sore. I've been talking too much. And I'm not going to go for a walk just yet. I think I need to refresh first. So I'll just leave that up. Turn the light out. Hang on. There. Just quickly show you around, but I'm not going to take you around. I need to rush upstairs and get ready. So there's behind, or there's in front of me, that's the rotor casting machine and my stands for me to be able to mount things, and I've been working on that just now. I've got to trim up those pieces. Yeah, I have a lot to do. I've got some things to clean up. It's all my tools and syringes. So this afternoon is going to be pretty exciting. I've got a lot of stuff to do. Bit of a mess. So yeah, I'll show you around later, but I'm going to go now.